go to a special access program.
There are two main types of special access programs: acknowledged and unacknowledged, or USAPs.
Those programs are basically totally off the books, and they are able to actually vacuum up money to be a self-perpetuating funding mechanism.
Certain USAPs are waived and also completely managed and controlled by private contractors, so they enjoy the secrecy protections only afforded to private corporations. There is virtually no high-level government oversight for these types of USAPs. In many cases, no elected official, including even the president, have knowledge a particular USAP even exists. Between 1947 and 1949, the government passed the National Security Act and the CIA Act. These laws allowed the intelligence community to withdraw money from any agency without disclosure. Essentially, money could be stolen from any program, and no elected official would ever know about it.
Great view of the eye socket. Very different eye socket from, and that's another thing that the scientists who've looked at this at Stanford have commented on. If you look at this creature and you look at the cranial vault, how large it is, the size from the eyes up is at least 3 times that of a human.
One of the first things that Dr. Lockman immediately remarked upon was the shape of the head and the skull. It was not something that he is accustomed to seeing, and it was quite interesting and in some ways exciting that the associated features that you would expect from a syndrome of that nature were not found. This specimen does not fall under any known, to me, class of disorders or syndromes. In many respects, the proportions of the spine and extremities are normal. The major abnormalities appear to be: 1, the size of the specimen, mid-face hypoplasia and underdevelopment of the jaw, and that the specimen has only 10 ribs. Humans normally have 12, rarely 11. One of the most remarkable aspects of this is when we came down to study the actual bone density. One of the features of fetuses that specialists looks at is the so-called growth plates of the epiphyseal joint, say, of the knees. The shock, I think, and the surprise was, and the absolute certainty that Dr. Lockman had was that this specimen is between the age of 6 to 8 years old. The shock was that this specimen was clearly not fetal. How do you explain how something 6 inches tall survived to any length of time that would allow for it to survive 100 or 1,000 years ago?
And what amazes me is the media. Well, they're so compromised with this, they don't dare do anything but follow the company line on it. The company line being a series of lies.
This is a document talking about the current program at the CIA. And it says that the PAO, Public Affairs Office, has relationships with reporters from every underlying major wire service, newspaper, news weekly, and television network in the nation. In many instances, we have persuaded reporters to postpone, change, hold, or even scrap stories that could have adversely affected national security. Now, what's the purpose of this? The CIA has no mandate for anything domestic. The FBI is domestic. What the hell is this?
Where are we now? We are in a bread and circus. This is a phrase used to describe the creation of public approval, not through excellent public policy, but rather through diversion and distraction.
No, I'm not doing that. I'm sorry. You are driving me nuts. That's ridiculous.
Keep people fat, keep them happy, keep them diverted, and keep them entertained with drivel and shock and nonsense. That's, unfortunately, the sort of thing that has taken the place of news and information.
So that what we're seeing today
is a world in which perception is being managed by as little as 5 major media corporations who collectively control magazines, newspapers, corporate news websites, television stations, movies, documentaries.
Who are these people? Who could be behind the curtain? Who could possibly be controlling us so effectively?
A shadowy government with its own Air Force, its own Navy, its own fundraising mechanism, and the ability to pursue its own ideas of the national interest, free from all checks and balances, and free from the law itself.
Majestic 12 is real. Notorious MJ-12, which is no longer called MJ-12. I'm trying to find out the new name. Basically, it's an oversight group intermingled with the National Security Council and the National Security Planning Group. They have full control. They have no congressional oversight whatsoever. They answer to nobody.
Whatever activity is going on, to the extent that it is a clandestine group, a quasi-government group, a quasi-private group, it is without any type, as far as I can tell, of high-level government oversight. And that is a great concern.
Ladies and gentlemen, the very word secrecy is repugnant in a free and open society. And there is very grave danger, for we are opposed around the world by a monolithic and ruthless conspiracy that relies primarily on infiltration instead of invasion, on subversion instead of elections. Its preparations are concealed, not published. Its mistakes are buried, not headlined. Its dissenters are silenced, not praised. It is a system which has conscripted vast human and material resources into the building of a tightly knit, highly efficient machine that combines military, diplomatic, intelligence, economic, scientific, and political operations. And we are, as a people, inherently and historically opposed to secret societies, to secret oaths, and to secret proceedings.
Muy pequeño de la costilla, pero no,
it's got too much tissue on it. They actually want a piece of the bone from at least like a 0.5 of a millimeter in.
Como medio milímetro de.
We took material from inside the cranium, also 2 clippings of the anterior front ribs of this being. And we were able to see under the dissecting microscope that in fact it did have bone marrow in them, so that meant there should be some good genetic material in there.
It was really nerve-wracking. Imagine, 2 big guys here trying to operate on this 13-centimeter long beam. But we did it.
The DNA analysis is being done by some of the world's best, but even the world's best need to be cross-checked, which is why I'm doing the 3 different facilities. So I actually ran 4 samples. I ran a sample of my own blood. It was a very small amount, just 100 microliters. I ran 2 blanks, things that just had water in them, because that would be essentially a contamination control. And then, of course, the sample itself. And really, the all-important first result was whether or not there was, in fact, any DNA which was isolated. And the actual shock for me was when I got the amount of DNA out of this sample. It was way above what I had originally expected. What you have on the left here is a so-called DNA ladder. This is a size standard This one on the end is in fact my DNA, and it has an expected size distribution as well as some banding. And validating the original measurement is this analysis that basically shows that we have a nice distribution for the sample's DNA.
When we physicists look for alien civilizations, we don't look for little green men. We look for energy consumption. We look for type 1, type 2, and type 3 civilizations. What are we? We are type 0. We get our energy from dead plants, oil and coal. Around the year 2100, we will become a type 1 civilization. And we see the beginnings of that now. What is the internet? The internet is a type 1 telephone system.
Imagine, if you will, sitting down to your morning coffee, turning on your home computer to read the day's newspaper. Well, it's not as far-fetched as it may seem.
Information has largely been controlled in a top-down way. What we're seeing now is the dissemination of discoveries coming up from the grassroots and not from a top-down centralized authority which has the ability to say, this isn't making it because we don't believe it's true, this is making it because it fits the mainstream.
When we want to form a new team in a new country, then all we have to do is contact someone there using the internet, and suddenly they're a member of the node.
From this online collective seems to come a real communion. People from all over gather in groups to investigate UFOs, with safety in numbers against ridicule and disinformation.
What we found in the past is we had a lot of anecdotal stories, but we didn't have a whole lot of data. With the advent of computers, personal computers, and the internet, we've been able to collect the data and analyze it through some 200 plus data points to allow us to be able to compare cases and to see exactly what's happening and what the trends are.
Nick Pope is our guest. He made this information public. He's also the former head of the Ministry of Defense's UFO project. So if anybody knows, we think it's you, Nick.
The Ministry of Defense is in the process of declassifying and releasing its entire archive of UFO files going back decades.
It's interesting and worth pointing out that while the British government is releasing their files and their documents, President Obama, who promised to do the same during the campaign, he still has not.
15 years.
15 years, that's spring.
My God. But I figured that, you know, after the Disclosure Project, we'd get this information out and we could go on with life.
How do we keep battering the ram at this door? Where do we find the strength to keep going forward? When you think that you're the only person that has the knowledge, you become marginalized. Steve was instrumental in bringing together a large group who had been involved in this subject and who for the first time realized that they were not alone in trying to come forward on the subject.
Governments, we've discovered, have not gone far enough, so we've decided that as people, using the CE5 protocols, form our own movement and do what governments have not been doing. We think of this as the People's Disclosure Movement.
And so we feel it's important to create an effort that's a global effort, which this has become.
My name is Mark Benz, and this is Rex, and we're in Bodega, California, and we're doing CE5.
My name is Jeff Bird, and here in Winchester, Virginia, USA, we are doing CE5.
My name is Peggy Brewster, and here in Middleton, United States of America, we are doing CE5.
We have 1,150 teams of CE5 ambassadors, which are spread over 52 countries.
My name is Andre, and here in Sweden, we are doing CE5.
Und wir machen zusammen CE5 in Deutschland.
Here in Burlington, Ontario.
Brisbane, Australia.
From Chester, Virginia.
In Hamilton, Ohio.
We are doing the CE5.
Konnichiwa.
Moje Daniel.
Es Leo Ortiz.
And here in Vancouver, British Columbia.
Present to CE5.
CE5.
The CE5 contacts
CE5.
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 We're doing CE5. And the reason I think that's so important is that It not only builds the knowledge base, but it also further potentiates this concept of pioneering a new pattern of peaceful contact. And that is something that no other group, large group on Earth is doing. Certainly isn't being done by the State Department and the Senate Foreign Relations Committee.
It seems to be it only takes one person to make contact. But hundreds of voices worldwide is a call that can't be missed. And likewise with innovation, the more heads in the game, the more likely we are to find a solution.
There's many technologies that people have talked about, many ways to the mountaintop.
We have so many modes of converting quantum vacuum energy or zero-point energy.
Some people think they know how to do it. Okay, fine. But if you do it theoretically, that's one thing. But then you got to do it experimentally, and that's the hard part.
Those opposed to new energy technologies can tie the hands of hundreds of inventors. But how will they ever fare against tens of thousands?
The output milliamperage is more than the input milliamperage. It's a clear indicator of overunity.
I'm gonna ask you to look away. I love my hands, but it hurts to pray. The life I have isn't what I'd seen. The sky's not blue and the field's not green. Wait for me. Wait for me. Wait for me. Wait
When you oscillate or vibrate magnetic fields, there's an effect in the gravity field. And how to do that linkage is what you're trying to get at, as I understand
Maxwell's
it.
equations are in that term right there. And what happens is if you're going to have a gravitational effect, it's going to happen over there.
Josh, I think I can help too. This channel here represents revolutions per minute. These are representing weight that we're measuring on the load cells. Full steam ahead.
When we look at our data, we lost 7% of weight. If we move this thing and it loses weight, I must be generating gravity waves.
Though the device maintains its shape and size in terms of dimension, it is losing mass. That's a possibility. If it is losing mass, then certainly it would also be affecting time in a very localized manner.
By looking at new technology, you could break through new commercial aspects to improve our society.
We should be looking for a disruptive breakthrough in this technology within the next 10 years. We're on the brink of developing any number of potential propulsion systems which would take us out of the solar system. I think we're going to beat NASA to the mark.
So I graduated from the UCLA School of Engineering in 1976. Got a flyer from the School of Engineering inviting me to a lecture by Ben Rich.
Ben Rich was the director of Lockheed's Skunk Works for 16 years. He oversaw a number of